Hey guys. Hey guys. Hey guys. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have. Hey guys. Hey guys. Oops. What the fuck? Sorry about that. Okay, so we have. Hold on. Yeah, I'm still a noob at this. Okay, I found it. Okay, I think there is no echo now. Cool. So, yeah, I don't have anybody on the Hangout for some reason. Maybe it's not a good time, or maybe nobody decided to join. Anyway, I posted a link to the Hangout in the comments video and in the chat. So, hi, Mina. Yeah, so I guess I have a couple of questions that people submitted, which I can answer in the meantime. I mean, maybe if somebody will join the Hangout or you guys post the questions in chat. But I have a couple of questions and I'll read them to you. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm kind of talking into the camera. Never did this before. So, hold on, let me read it. Yeah, so the question that came, one question that came, reads like this. I'm 23, male, living with my parents and 20-year-old brother. We moved back in a week ago because I just couldn't hack it anymore in my university apartment. How do I spare my family from unfolding madness? The one thing that I still care about is sparing them emotional pain, even though I care about it less and less. They are loving, but they're worried that I don't talk and don't shave and whatever. I can shave, but otherwise prefer to stay away from noise and not do much. Yeah, so that's fairly normal, and the desire to spare them their pain is also normal. I mean, it's good that you have very loving, supporting family. Not everybody is so lucky. So, as you know, as a lot of people said, I think that in society we should have places where people will go through this process. I mean, that's what historically monasteries were about, but we don't. So everybody is kind of on their own in this. And well, there are a couple of things. The best thing I think you can do is be open and authentic with them. You know, whatever you feel is going on with you. I mean, you can spare them the feelings without talking about too much of madness and trauma that you're going through if you wish, but you can always be authentic in saying something like that you are undergoing what appears to be very important transformation and you feel like you want to be in solitude most of the time. And that's normal. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. You just need some time alone, that you grateful for their love and support. So you can be authentic without being hurtful. Now, you still may experience a lot of negative feelings towards them. And that's also normal. And towards anybody, for that matter. And one thing to remember is that you don't have to express them. It's important not to suppress them. So to allow yourself to feel whatever it is you're feeling, but you don't have to express them. And that includes compassion too, in some way. So you may feel overwhelming desire to help them see the truth, whatever it is, right? You don't have to actively engage in that until you feel that you're more or less free from that. So, and then you can, it's your decision whether you want to do it or not. So, regardless, it will probably be both hard for you and for them. And even if it is not hard for you any longer, right? It still may be hard for them, because in a certain way, as a personal relationship is concerned, they may find that you kind of slipping away through their fingers, and it can be very hard for them, even if it's not hard for you, even if you are already in a place where it is not hard for you at all to be around them, to communicate with them, when you not no longer even require your solitude. And even if you try your best not to hurt their feelings, it still may be hard for them. So it is, to a certain extent, unavoidable. But the best thing you can do, I think personally, is just to be honest with them and be authentic in terms of what's going on, what you're grateful them for, what if any kind of support they can give you, and what it is you're asking of them, not demanding but asking. So like, for example, give you your time of solitude. Okay, so that's one question. Another one I have from Reddit. Let me read it too. Hold on. Just a second. Sorry, I should have opened it, I guess. Okay, got it. In order to awaken, it is often suggested that one has to undo social conditioning and acquired beliefs, dogma, religion, altruism, culture, TV, parents, teachers, friends, etc. Yes. But how can one who is actively living and participating in the world, career, friends, hobbies, do this? Yes, so that's a very good question, and it's related to the previous one. You can't. There is no way around it. So you're basically asking, in other words, if it's possible to authentically awaken while still dreaming. So you, in authentic realization, your social life, as you say, career, friends, hobbies, will invariably need to be set aside. Not forever, but it is going inwards towards yourself, towards the true center of your existence. And the things that you realize that you think matter now will not matter afterwards. So you cannot do this without some degree of social isolation, as it's called, or aloneness, or solitude, because the whole process is basically the realization that you are completely alone, and you have always been. Not lonely. It's a difference. You cannot be lonely in aloneness, but alone. And after the unfolding completes, after everything is done and all the realizations are made, and this process has completed, then you go back. You engage in society if you want to, but the society is no longer part of you. So you do not lose anything that is authentic during this process. So if you love somebody, you will keep loving them, but you lose all your falsehoods, and you have to be ready and be willing to lose everything that you think is true. So how can this take place if you are determined to keep being involved in career, society, friends, and stuff like that? So it's not possible. The only way for the authentic realization to happen is to reach a point where truth is more important to you than anything else. So it needs to be your sole pursuit in a way. So that's unfortunately the truth of the matter. Ivo has a question. He says, hi, Ivo. How do I recognize I am dreaming? Well, if you have to ask this question, you are. Here we go. Right? If you don't know if you're dreaming, then you are. It's as simple as that. Unless you're asking about, like, if it's during the night, it's somewhat different. But if you need to ask if you are awakened, then you're not. If you need to ask or confirm if you're enlightened, then you're not. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Ben asks a question. How does one move from Brahmic dreaming to finished enlightenment? Yeah, this is an interesting question. I mean, Brahmanic, sorry. The Brahmanic dreaming is so subtle. It's pretty much it's beyond the ego. It's well beyond the ego at this point. It's beyond reality, consciousness, bliss. It's beyond universal love. It's beyond the state of Jesus Christ. Basically, it is so subtle. It's pretty much reality. So but so usually it happens on its own. This last sort of very, very subtle clinging of ego falls away on its own. But I mean, again, some people, like Osho spent another 3 years in silence. Meditation is pretty much impossible at this point. So psychedelics again, I mean, can possibly help. But basically, the key is to realize that Brahmanic dreaming, the everything just happens. There is no doer. I mean, if it's authentic, then there's usually. I mean, most of the time people say everything just happens. There's no doer. Way before that actually. Way before what I describe as Brahmanic dreaming. So there's pretty much no emotion at this point, and you kind of in complete acceptance of death and in complete acceptance of reality, pretty much at this point. The only way that separates it from complete enlightenment is the recognition that at this point you are clinging to death subtly. So this kind of there's a sort of witnessing passivity at this point, and the ultimate last realization is that being and non-being are one. That there is no difference. So so the level of unconditional love is the realization of life. Buddhahood is the realization of death. The last realization is that they are one, and that there cannot be life without death, and cannot be death without life. So, which ultimately frees you to live your life the way you want and be active again. So another way of saying is that enlightenment is the ultimate realization of death. But this realization itself, which can also be called, emptiness and stuff, is also empty. So the realization that you're gonna die and nothing matter itself doesn't matter. And that's when you can come back and just live your life, right? That's what the last picture in 10 Bowls of Zen is ultimately about, right? That is reaching the source. So it is a full circle in a way. Okay. Yeah, so Ivo asked, yeah. So one thing to notice is that ego always thinks that it is further along in this process than it actually is, and I thought it too. It's unavoidable also. So most people who are talking about Brahman in Hinduism terms realized Atman. Most people who are talking about the drop into the absolute or realization of the absolute. I mean, some people speak about the absolute as soon as they find consciousness. So as soon as they realize Atman, they already think, oh my God, I realized the absolute. But most people that are after some time feel that they dropped into the absolute, they realized the Brahman. So absolute is deeper, right? Absolute is beyond love and is beyond emptiness. It's when love and emptiness merge together. So it's kind of it's deeper still, and that's when you become ordinary again, and that's when the universal consciousness is no more. So the universal consciousness becomes yours again. Which also, by the way, Gautama warned about being stuck in Brahmanic dreaming. I mean, I remember reading somewhere he called yogis Brahmins. I mean, and that's accurate because most yogis usually reach Brahman and then they kind of stuck there, almost witnessing and then no doer, like kind of trance-like state. And which is also why Gautama did not teach universal consciousness. Okay, so so one person just posted a comment on Reddit. He says, "I'm confused. You said you no longer have an ego or mind." Yes. Don't you need a mind to be able to read or think of answers in these questions? Okay, so I have an answer on core about the difference between a mind and a brain. so the mind is not the brain. Animals don't have minds, right? So where does the mind appear? On the level of the ant, on the level of a rat, on the level of a cat, or like what is the mind, right? So unless you immersed in the spiritual ideas that animals are a lower breed of being and whatever, and only humans can reach God and stuff like that, which is nothing but human vanity, then you have to realize that on some level we are absolutely the same as any animal. But we're not, because we have egos. So the dreaming mind can be said to be the dream of the brain. So it's the part of the brain that created non-existing entities, which is ego, and not only yours, but of other people as well, and believed in their existence. So it started dreaming, and then it forgot that it dreams, that it's not real, that all of that is not reality. And God also exists in the mind as something that is on top of all of the egos that exist in the mind. That's something that is on top of all of this theater, right? Which is why authentic enlightenment transcends God, right? So when you realize that you do not exist, you realize God. But God also only exists in the mind as something that sits on top of that. So when you find the witness, basically, you find your real self. I mean, not in form of, well, it feels like something ephemeral and like non-immaterial and stuff like that, which can never die and things like that. These are all descriptions from the perspective of ego. But reality is that you become the witness of your dream, and then the dream starts to slowly cease. So the mind starts to slowly grind to a halt. The mind is only the dreaming mind. So when the mind, so to transcend the mind means in a way to realize that you're dreaming. To dissolve the mind is enlightenment. So when the mind stops dreaming completely, you are just a body. And a body is an inseparable, I mean, the brain is an inseparable part of the body. You cannot separate them, right? Just like any animal. Right? People get fixated on language. Language, yes. Language, especially initially, it seems like it's a problem. But language is not a problem. And thinking is not a problem. Animals think. They just don't think in language. But they think. I mean, if they didn't think, they wouldn't be able to learn, right? But they don't think about themselves in the way that we do. So, am I a good person? Am I a bad person? Oh, is it better to be this way? Is it better to be this way? Oh, this is horrible. Am I altruistic? Should I be this way? You know, they're not obsessed with the self-image and with the relationship, with the social relationships with each other. They live in reality. They live in actuality. You know, there's food. There are predators. There's, you know, so the reality beyond the dream is the same reality that every being lives in, except humans. So, because humans, our society, from the very early age, we start training children against nature, how they should be and behave. And we punish them to deviate when they deviate from that. We shame them for the very natural expression of themselves. You know, we teach them from the very early age that nudity is something to be ashamed of and to be avoided, for example, that they need to be nice, that, you know, boys shouldn't cry, girls should be nice, all of that. So, and they are too small to realize what's going on. And they, just like I'm speaking from my own experience also, so they adopt this dreaming persona, how I should be, based on what society, parents, peers, everybody, TV, everything tells them. They adopt it unconsciously, and then they forget. We forget that we did that. So that's dreaming. So every being, every child arrives into this world pure, pristine. So babies don't dream. They may have night dreams, like, you know, the brain processing new information, but I don't mean, I mean in egoic sense. They don't dream, right? They if you look at a baby, if they're upset, they cry. The moment they stop being upset, they can laugh. They don't carry this resentment, you know. An emotion comes, then emotion subsides. That's it. Nothing's left. Nothing sticks, right? So just like an animal who can be chased by a tiger one moment and then peacefully graze the grass the other moment, without any PTSD, any kind of shame, because as soon as the danger is gone, it's gone. So they live in the moment. When we live in the mind can never live in the moment. The mind needs to live either in the past or in the future. But the mind refuses to live right now, because in order for it to live right now, it has to abandon all the obsessive thoughts about the past or all the anxious thoughts about the future, right? It has to abandon the story of a persona, the goals, motives, relationships, and it has to abandon all of it altogether to sink into the present moment. So from this perspective, the mind and the brain is different thing. The mind can be destroyed. The brain cannot be. I mean, destroying the brain is the same as destroying the liver. I mean, I cannot be without a brain. Otherwise, I would be a tree. So brain is an inseparable part of myself. Brain is a separable part of my body. So of course I can learn, I can teach, I can speak, I can learn another language if I want to, right? But my brain is potent, just like the brain of any human is very potent. So, but that's not the mind. Okay. Great, that's what I assumed. I've imagined it as when an old TV turns off, the lines of static meet together and collapse into nothing. One line is formless, one line is form. Well, yeah, kind of. Ivo, you say that the last stages are the more painful. No, actually, they're not. They're not more painful. The if the dream is subtler and you have almost no, yeah. So the distance between the realization of Atman and the realization of Brahman is painful. So the distance between the realization of consciousness, life, love, universal love, and the realization of death is painful, because during that you go through acceptance that every negative and positive trait of every human being you have ever met and know is your own creation and your own positive or negative trait. And if you hate somebody, you hate yourself. And if you love somebody, you love yourself. And if somebody irritates you, you irritate yourself. And if you have compassion for somebody, or you cry for somebody, it's compassion for yourself, and you're crying for yourself. And so all of that, kind of, in order for all egos to merge into one and disappear, so that you don't dream and you are alone, that is painful. And arguably, it's more painful than the realization, than waking up, than self-realization. So it's a long path. I mean, it usually takes people a long time to go through from self-realization to enlightenment. The difference between Brahmanic dreaming and no dreaming at all is super subtle. Yeah, so it's not like so the jump from ego into being, which is what nowadays mostly called enlightenment, is painful. The jump from being into non-being is more painful. That's true. Okay. Jacob. Jacob. Okay. I remember Jacob. So we discussed this at length, Jacob. So is emptiness Brahman realized when all wave dissolves into consciousness? I hope it's that, Jacob. Or is that just the beginning of emptiness? Yeah, so when all waves dissolve into that consciousness, then you realize. I mean, it's not an instant realization, right? So self-realization is instant. Self-realization either happened or it didn't. The rest is not like, oh, boom, something happened. So you just process through all of it until there is nothing left. And there could be a lot of realizations in between. I mean, mostly of the personal matter. So by the time that you realize true emptiness, you, strictly speaking, cannot find consciousness anymore. I mean, you can say consciousness is what you experience during daytime, but when you self-realize, your identity jumps from it's that, Jacob. Yeah. So your identity jumps from ego into consciousness, and you say, okay, so only consciousness is true, everything else is not true. I am consciousness, I am love. By the time that you realize emptiness, this sort of consciousness is not perceivable anymore. So the identity, which is also a false identity, moves into what's been called awareness. And what's also been called awareness is not aware, awareness which isn't aware of itself. So consciousness is aware of itself. Awareness which isn't aware of itself, or sometimes it's called transcendental awareness, cannot be perceived. Emptiness cannot be perceived. It can only be apprehended, so to say. Because basically what it is, it's the realization of death. Death cannot be perceived. Death cannot be experienced. Death can only be apprehended, made peace with, you see. And it's sort of a very mystical sense of identity. Nothing pretty much can be said about it, because it's an identity of a man who is looking at his death, or a woman. It doesn't matter. But that's Brahmanic dreaming, pretty much, how I use this term. So when you reach the source, when being and non-being become one, this identity is also seen to be false. So the identity moves to the body, right? So you can no longer say, well, I'm here and I'm not here at the same time, which is basically a fancy spiritual way of saying, I think I understood that I'm gonna die. That's what enlightenment is all about. It's not about some spiritual realizations. It's just about the realization that you're gonna die. And what you think matters right now is not gonna matter in the ultimate scheme of things, you see? And then you cry your eyes out about it. That's all it is. You know, people make it spiritual. It's not spiritual in a way. There's nothing spiritual about it in the end. When you go through it, you understand all spiritual terminology, because the phenomenological, experiential, the experience of going through all the stages of unfolding the dream is the same for everybody. So you can kind of relate to the experience to the description of enlightenment from any sage, any master, in any terms. But it's not about spirituality. Ultimately, spirituality is a vehicle. It's just a tool to rid you of all the illusions and delusions of life. So you cannot perceive emptiness directly. You can only realize it. Okay, Ben says, it can't be known, only known of emptiness. Yes. It can be known directly. It can only be known of. You could say it this way too. Ivo says, Rupert Spira says that after self-realization, you don't feel the full peace because we have to rewire our body to align with our understanding through yoga meditation. What do you think about that? Yeah, so it's the same thing. I mean, I don't think he's completely realized because he speaks in such spiritual terms, but he's referring to the same thing, because all this talk about alignment, alignment with understanding and stuff, it's reaching complete peace is basically the same process of making your peace with it, with death. And then once you made your peace with your own non-existence, then this is also seen as empty, and you are free to live in freedom as you want. And nothing that isn't nothing that doesn't directly affect your body can bother you psychologically or emotionally. which is also pretty much how animals live. So the full peace can only be known in emptiness, can only be known in Buddhahood. The full peace. It cannot be like the path from self-realization into full peace is emotional. So it's more practice, more releasing your suppressed trauma. Because you see, another way to speak about it is that you are born with this knowledge, right? So every being creature, every living creature that formed, you can say by nature, whatever, knows that it's gonna leave this world the same way it came, right? Because like, notice that everybody's saying, what happens after death? What happens after death? And nobody's saying, what was happening before I was born? Those are equivalent questions. You see, it's the same thing. But nobody asks that because there is no fear in it, right? But there is a fear of what's gonna be happening to me after death, and that's not really fear of death. That's the fear of enlightenment. So enlightenment is coming back into the same state at which you appeared, and these questions, they don't arise in this state. So the when you appeared this way, you were innocent and pure, and then as you built your role, as you built up your self-identity, it happens through assimilation of ideas and through suppression of emotion, because every idea about how you should be, how you should behave, is an idea of a suppression of your natural tendency to behave a certain way. So we suppressed our emotions and we carry them with us. We suppress our tears, we suppress our fears, we suppress our anger, we suppress our love. And the process of unfolding is when all of the suppressed emotions, all of the suppressed suffering comes to the surface, experienced and released. So you can talk about it in a very spiritual language, saying that it is rewiring our body to align with our understanding through yoga meditation, but it doesn't change the substance of what it is. Ivo says, so is aligning with non-existence. Well, yeah, but I mean, you are aligned with non-existence in your natural state. I mean, when you're born, you know that your body, you have a sense of self, not a psychological sense of self, but a physical sense of self. I mean, if you don't have a sense of self, you wouldn't be able to do anything. So you're learning the world around you. You appeared. You know that you're gonna die. I mean, every animal knows that. The psychology comes much later. Okay, so let me see. Shay asks a question: what does it mean to unfold into the dream? I don't think I ever used this term. I'm talking about unfolding the dream completely, or just unfolding the dream. I'm with regards to into the dream, I'm sometimes talking about awakening into the dream versus awakening from the dream. So awakening from the dream is enlightenment. Awakening into the dream is oftentimes referred to as self-realization. So as Rupert Spear is talking about what happens up from self-realization, after self-realization, is he's talking about the path from self-realization into enlightenment. He's talking about continuous unfolding of the dream. Enlightenment is when the dream is unfolded completely. In self-realization, you sort of awaken to the state where, oh my God, only consciousness is true. Everything I know is not true. All of the idea is not true. And it is oftentimes confused, and I did it too, with saying that, okay, so I understood my solipsism. I understood that all ideas about the world are the ideas of the mind, and that's enlightenment. No, not really. I mean, strictly speaking, all ideas are not true. Yes, sure. Only what you see here is true. But if you let go of an apple, it's going to fall to the ground. You can say, it's not true. I don't know that. There is no 100% certainty. And I'll say, sure. Yeah, there's no 100% certainty. Sure. And then do it again. It's going to fall again. So not all ideas about reality are not true. I mean, figuring out ideas about reality that are practically true is what science does. And science has nothing to do with spirituality. It's a completely orthogonal pursuit. It figures out how this reality works, how the world works. Science is the art of making predictions. So predictions and belief are very different things. How do I know that the apple is going to fall to the ground when I let go of it? Well, it's a prediction because I observed it multiple times, and there's no reason for me to believe they're not. I mean, it's not. Every animal makes predictions. That's what behavior is. That's the definition of behavior. But beliefs are different. Beliefs are beliefs about yourself, who you are, how you should be, how you should behave, what kind of a person you are. Is there a God? Which fundamentally is also a belief about yourself, because God, to the extent that it exists, only exists in you. So all of these ideas are beliefs, and they're not true in the ultimate sense. So dropping them out, shedding them, is a painful emotional experience. These ideas are supported by suppressed emotion from the early days of your childhood. So all of these ideas are not true. But in self-realization, when you wake up into the dream and you have this feeling, oh my God, everything is unreal. Everything is unreal. I'm just witnessing it's all my own dream. Yes, but the mind's at this point is very confused still. So it confuses the unreality of your persona, the unreality of your relationships, the unreality of all of the ideas about yourself with the unreality of the walls around you. And some of the people that are in this state are pretty much, delusional, because like, well, I don't know anything. Well, does this wall exist? Oh, I don't know. Well, walk through it, everything that I believe, only things that I believe exist. Well, okay, stop believing this wall and walk through it, and I'm gonna watch and laugh. I mean, that's also why they have sticks in Zen Buddhism. Oh, everything is empty. Bam! Was that empty? It's the internal world is not real. The psychology is empty. Ego doesn't exist. Walls exist. It's fine to admit that. You don't have to take it that far. But the mind that has just woken up, when you just jumped out of the mind and you realize that you're dreaming, everything seems not real. And that was my experience too. It's a universal experience. There's nothing wrong with it. But the rest of the path is to drop away more and more of the falsehoods, more and more of the things that are unreal, to end up living in reality. And as you go through this, you work through your emotionality, the mind becomes quieter, and your senses become more and more pronounced, pristine, clear. So you are kind of returning to the reality from being immersed in the game of mind all the time. I can't figure out if I should be looking at the camera or the screen, and it's so confusing. I just got a new camera and a new microphone. It's not going as smoothly as I thought it would be. Where are people in the Hangout? I'm talking to chat. Okay. I'm thirsty. Jesus, what an ugly motherfucker I am. Okay. We are ashamed. Why are you ashamed? That you didn't join the Hangout. You should be ashamed. Shame on you. Can one release too much trauma too fast, where it actually slows the process down? Is that in that you have to take a break to recover from it all? Is it better to pace yourself? No, I mean, you can't slow down the process. It's not possible. I mean, releasing too much of your trauma and then taking time to recover from it is exactly the process. So enlightenment is the ultimate trauma to the ego, is the ultimate trauma, because ego can also be said to be the part of yourself that doesn't want to die, that thinks that it's going to live forever. First has some idea of what a good person is, and then it needs to kind of replicate itself in your children, like a meme, like some sort of a virus, like, parents say, oh, you have some, I gave you all the good in me. That's ego, like replicating itself. And then a spiritual ego doesn't want to die, clinging to immaterial existences. Oh, I'm going to be consciousness forever. I'm going to be awareness forever, and things like that. So no, I mean, releasing trauma and recovering from it, making peace with your trauma, making peace with yourself, making peace with all the emotions, all the pain, anguish, tears, everything. Allowing it, loving yourself regardless of everything that you experience, for it, accepting it all unconditionally, is the process. So in my experience, I mean, pacing yourself is basically just it depends on how fast you can take it all. It's a lot to take, and it's absolutely impossible to get enlightened in a day. So self-realization is an instant event, but the path from self-realization to enlightenment is very long. Usually, it's emotional. I basically, for a year and a half, I cried every day. It's like every day I would cry. It was so much tears, so much compassion for humanity, so much anguish, so much anger. And I was going as fast as I could, right? It's a lot. So there's no amount of some people say, Osho said once that if you take all of it, your heart would explode out of love. That's how it feels. It just feels too much to take. There's so much love. It just feels too much. But I don't think that it's physically feasible still. And the only reason I don't think so is that I know that people take absolutely insane amounts of LSD, let's say, insane amounts. Like some people do thumbprints and just, I don't know, go through like thousands of deaths, and I can only imagine the kind of anguish that they experience there, and they still physically wake up somehow after that. So I don't think it is possible physically. So because this experience, this large dose of LSD is not going to get you enlightened at all. It's just going to be a tremendous experience for the mind, because enlightenment is a realization. It's not an experience. It's a realization. So I don't think, strictly speaking, there is a point where it just becomes too much to take. But you certainly pace yourself, whether consciously or unconsciously. You pace yourself, because on one hand, you know that you will uncover all of your suffering eventually, and you will experience all of it. On the other hand, you don't want to. And the suffering that you still don't want to experience, the pain, the tears in you, which you still don't want to experience, is exactly what's still pulling your strings a little bit. So Adya said once that after self-realization, we become more sensitive to truth. So you become more sensitive to noticing that something is pulling your strings, and you become uncomfortable with that. You start feeling the falseness of that. So I don't think that you can slow it down by experiencing too much. Okay. Hello. What is your channel about? Huh. I never thought of that. Okay. Well, my channel is about what is my channel about? It's about discovering the truth of your nature and discovering the freedom from human condition, which historically has been called spiritual enlightenment. That's what my channel is about. Ben, nothing is true, even eating food. But see what happens if you stop eating food. Yes, exactly. So the nothing is true, even eating food. It's still a confused mind, which is everything is not true. So I mean, it's a statement which is in the absolute sense correct, because you can say, well, what is food? It's just a word, it's just a concept and stuff. Like, well, you can philosophize it up to a point where you can say nothing is true except the experience of the taste of the food in your mouth, which cannot be described. Yes. But from the practical perspective, if you start speaking this way, that's just your enlightened ego hoping to show everybody that you understand it and they don't. Because from the practical perspective, there's absolutely no reason for you to speak this way to people. So it's still kind of the mind processing the realization. It's not the destination. The destination is when it doesn't even occur to you to spit out this nonsense to people who are not your students, for example. Okay. Ivo, it happened to me that after emotional pain, my mind shut down for a month or so. Has that happened? Has that to happen to know that the process is working, or it's not necessary? Ivo, can you tell me in another comment what you mean by the mind shut down? I mean, what you experience no thought, nor emotion, or what was that? or you felt numb, because this is very different things. Okay, I have some more comments on Reddit. What is the difference and process between spiritual awakening and the initial realizing that an ego exists? Is it different from awakening to enlightenment? Well, self-realization can also be said to be the realization of the existence of ego, actually. And most people who realize the existence of ego don't really realize the existence of ego. They just realizing that there's something in you which you don't like is not the realization of the existence of ego. It's the opposite. It's like everyone knows that there are a lot of things that you don't like. Enlightenment is when nothing about you don't like anymore, and that naturally applies to other people because everybody is the same. So when ego cannot realize its own non-existence or its own existence. I mean, so if you realize the existence of ego, if you truly realize the existence of ego, then something else must realize it. And that is why in self-realization, the identity moves to consciousness, or like the higher self, or God, or whatever it is. But you realize that you're not your ego, that you're something more, right? And that's equivalent to the realization of existence of ego. Because if you say, I am not my ego for the very first time, then this is for the very first time when you acknowledge the existence of ego. An enlightened person cannot say, I am not my ego, because it's absurd, right? He doesn't have an ego. What does it mean to be I'm not my ego, right? What does it mean? I'm just me. Like, I don't understand what it means to say I'm not my ego. But in self-realization, you, the real you, which at this stage feels like consciousness is the real you, but it's not. But at this stage, it feels like it. Says, "Oh Jesus, I am not my ego," and that's the very first time when the ego is seen. And then when the ego is seen, the identity moves to consciousness. And then again, it can flare up. You can forget about it. You can get lost in its crazy games, and then forget about it again. And then finally, the point comes, which some people call abiding awareness. I think Adi calls it abiding awareness, is that when you never forget. That when you never forget that you're not your ego, that you are absolutely never identify with it. It's still not gone, but whatever its craziness and whatever, you can always just watch it. It never can like really pull you. You can always just watch it, witness it. So it's the same point as Ramana would describe as sahaja samadhi, effortless samadhi. So when you don't have to extend any effort to be in this state of never identifying with your ego, that's sahaja. Okay. Ivo says, like no thoughts, emotion, nothing, like peace, being aware. Yes. So that's beautiful. That's wonderful. That's like peace, being aware. That when that quiet mind. That's pretty much what happens. So, and it does happen after emotional pain, because ego's disappearance, dissolution can only happen through emotional pain. And it is very frequent experience where you have a spiritual experience or emotional pain, and then you're in on a couple of months in this state, which is very peaceful. The mind is very quiet. It's pretty much sahaja samadhi. But then you kind of go back with egoic identification of there's more pain and stuff like that. And the mistake that people make is that they're saying, oh, I had it, and then I lost it. No, you cannot lose it. It's just that bliss and peace are relative experience, right? So, well, peace isn't, but still, the amount of peace is a relative experience. So, which is why enlightenment is not bliss. Enlightenment is the absolute peace, from which there is no deeper peace, and you're just always at peace. But every time that a part of your ego crumbles away, every time that you let go of something, some part of it dissolves. And that's what is painful emotionally. Then what happens is, usually it happens in spiritual experiences, meditation, psychedelics, things like that. What happens is you experience bliss and peace coming after that as a comparative experience of how your experience of life is now compared to what it was before, when this part of your ego was still there. But when you get used to it, then you start noticing that not all of it is gone. So that's the nature of the bliss on this path, in a way, right? And you notice, as you get used to the new baseline, then you start noticing other things. And when there are no more other things at all, and there's just a constant baseline, and you completely got used to it, and then there's nothing else that can possibly arise, then that's basically enlightenment, sorry. I've had where it feels like energy overload, in that it felt like energy was passing through and releasing trauma too fast, where I could not meditate without worsening my symptoms. Well, I mean, meditation is supposed to worsen your symptoms in a way. So the best form of meditation is the allowing meditation, when everything is allowed. Because you see, as I said in my other video, there is no difference between negative and positive emotion. The mind makes the difference. It's only the mind that says, well, crying doesn't feel nice, but, laughter feels nice, or something. So you kind of have to accept it all. If you are afraid of your negative emotion of fear, pain, tears, then you better not pursue this, right? Because that's exactly what it's about. It's about accepting them to the extent that they're no longer there. Ben, I remember when I realized ego, and it felt like I was outside of myself watching Ben go about his daily business for a few months. Now I can't find the Ben. Yes, exactly. Yes. So you kind of start witnessing, and it dissolves more and more and more and more, and you can't find anything anymore. And you kind of maybe awareness, which is even deeper than consciousness, and you kind of, there's no doer, things just happen. So sort of, yes. So it starts with I am, and then it goes to I'm not, and then kind of both and neither. Jacob, I didn't have to go work then. it may have not been a big of a problem, but to continue functioning in the world, I had to drastically reduce my practice. Well, yeah, and that comes down also to the question which we had in the very beginning of the video, which is it possible to go through it while being functional in the world? Well, no. I mean, you will come back functioning in the world, but if you want to go all the way and realize the absolute authentic happiness of enlightenment and abandon your ego altogether, then you will become dysfunctional in the world for a period of time, and that's fine. You know, that's fine. So the practice will pull you out of the world because you are engaged in the world and you want to be functioning in the world, because the world, in a way, is supplier of your happiness right now, or meaning, right? So if you want to find happiness and meaning which is independent on the world, then you need to go inwards. So you need to turn into yourself, you know, turn away from the world into yourself. So it will be, it's the same reason, for example, when people who use psychedelics a lot sometimes say, well, and even though they are non-addictive and yeah, and so there were no physical addiction demonstrated to them scientifically ever, but they say, self-regulating was the word that I was looking for, but they would say, well, I stopped using them too much because I noticed that I started feeling depressed, right? So the real world, as you approach closer and closer to realizing its fakeness, to realizing the unreality of your own identity, and the fragility of the beliefs that you made your life upon, it becomes more and more depressing. And when you make the realization, you will oftentimes be completely dysfunctional. It's like Tolle, who spent like, what, 8 months or a year on park benches. I mean, I was doing nothing for a year and a half. Just was sitting on my sofa crying, you know, sometimes, and sometimes looking at the trees and squirrels and taking walks and like, pretty much doing nothing but that. Okay, let's see if I think, yeah, I pretty much, yeah, I don't have any more questions. I'm sorry if it was a little cumbersome. It's kind of weird to be just talking with myself, looking into camera. I need to get better at this. But I hope it was useful for you. It's 12:15, so yeah, let me know if I should be making more of those. You can submit questions. You can actually submit questions and comments on existing videos, and I will make. Sarah, hi Sarah. Ivo says it was very useful. Well, I'm glad. Ivo, thank you for submitting your questions. Okay, and see you next time. So thank you for listening. Bye. Bye.